Alright, if you're doing the split the middle way that we did on the last section, first of all we'll find greatest common factor. Greatest common factor here is 1. Then we'll multiply a times c. 1 times 12 gives us 12. Next we're listing the factors of 12. How can we multiply and get 12? So to multiply and get 12, we can do 1 times 2, and then 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And then if we add those factors, the sum of those two numbers, 1 plus 12 gives us 13, 2 plus 6 gives us 8, 3 plus 4 gives us 7. We're looking for the pair that adds up to 8. So 2 and 6 is our pair, so we'll split the middle term into 2x plus 6x. From here we're factoring by grouping. Greatest common factor of the first two terms is x. Divide those out. X squared divided by x is x. 2x divided by x is 2. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is 6. Divide 6x by 6, you get x. 12 divided by 6, you get 2. And now we see this x plus 2 in common. So we can factor the x plus 2 out, and we're left with x plus 6. You can distribute twice and combine like terms to see if you get back to x squared plus 8x plus 12. On this next one, 1 times 12 is 12 again, so we're looking for the factors of 12. Now this time, so this is what we had from the previous one. This time we're multiplying and getting positive, so that could be either both positive or both negative. So if we then make them both negative, negative 1 plus negative 12 is negative 13. Just clear that out. So negative 1 plus negative 12, negative 13. Negative 2 times negative 6 is negative 12, negative 2 plus negative 6, negative 8. Negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. So the pair that adds up to negative 7 is negative 3 and negative 4. Split the middle term into negative 3x plus negative 4x. Factor by grouping. Greatest common factor of the first two terms is x. Divide them by x. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 3x divided by x is negative 3. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is 4. Now be careful here. If I divide out by positive 4, I'm left with negative x minus 3. In order for me to go on to the next step, these have to be an exact match. So instead of factoring out a positive 4, I'm going to factor out a negative 4. Let's see what happens. Negative 4x divided by negative 4 is positive x. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. Now we do in fact have an exact match inside of the parentheses. So we can factor the x minus 3 out, and we're left with x minus 4. GCF here is 1. A times C, 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. So we're looking at factors of negative 12. Now if I multiply and get negative 12, one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. If I then add and get positive 1, then the bigger term had to be positive. So negative 1 times negative 12, times positive 12, excuse me, is negative 12. Negative 1 plus 12 is 11. Negative 2 times negative times positive 6 is negative 12. Negative 2 plus 6 is negative 4. Sorry, positive 4. Negative 3 times positive 4 is negative 12. Negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. That's the one we want. So split your middle term into negative 3x, positive 4x. Factor by grouping. Greatest common factor of the first two terms is x. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 3x divided by x is negative 3. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is 4. 4x divided by 4 is x. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. We have an exact match inside of the parentheses, so we can factor the x minus 3 out, and we're left with x plus 4. GCF's 1, a times c, 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to get negative 12, and the sum needs to be negative 11. So this time the bigger one is negative. So we can list out our factors and then add them up. 1 plus negative 12, negative 11. 2 plus negative 6 is negative 4. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. Pair that adds up to negative 11 is right here. So we can split the middle term into positive 1x, negative 12x. Greatest common factor of the first two terms is x. Divide them out, you get x plus 1. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is 12, but if we divide out a positive 12, we end up with negative x. We want that to be positive x, so let's factor out a negative 12. So we get positive x plus 1. We've got an exact match inside of parentheses, so we can factor the x plus 1 out, and we're left with x minus 12. Distribute twice, combine like terms to check your answer. Alright, different number here. We've got two. GCF of 1, a times c is negative 20. We're looking for factors of negative 20 that add up to negative 1. So my sum needs to be negative. So the bigger number needs to be negative. Now if we add these together, you get negative 19, negative 8, and negative 1. So the pair we need is that last one. Alright, so split the middle into 4 and negative 5. Greatest common factor of the first two terms is x. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is negative 5. If you factored out a positive 5 to begin with, you'd have the wrong signs. Now we have the x plus 4 in common. We're left with x minus 5. This one we want to solve by factoring, so let's subtract 15 from each side. We get x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. A times c, 1 times negative 15 is negative 15. So we're looking at factors of negative 15, and the bigger number needs to be positive this time. If we look at their sums of those factors, negative 1 plus 15 is 14. If you look at negative 3 plus 5, you get negative 2. So the pair we want, I did that wrong, that's positive 2, sorry. The pair we want is this last one. Split the middle term. Factor by grouping. Greatest common factor is x. Divide that out, you get x minus 3. Greatest common factor of the last two terms is 5. Divide that out, you get x minus 3. Now we have the x minus 3 in common, so we can factor that out, and we're left with x plus 5. Got a product equal to 0, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So either x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 5 equals 0. Add 3 to each side to get 3. Subtract 5 from each side and you get negative 5. So two solutions, either 3 or negative 5. You can check them by plugging them back in. Alright, he wants to extend his art studio so that he has 3 times the area. So find the existing area. Length times width, 12 times 10 gives us 120 for the existing one. So 3 times that, 3 times 120 gives us 360 square feet for the new one. Now the way that we calculate that new area is you do length times width. Well, this length will be x plus 12 because it's being extended by x amount. And then the width will be x plus 10. So length times width, x plus 12 times x plus 10. You can distribute twice. X times x is x squared. X times 10 is 10x. 12 times x is 12x. 12 times 10 is 120. You can combine like terms. Need to get those constants together. Subtract 360 from each side. So at this point we have x squared plus 22x minus 240 equal to 0. Then we're going to try to find factors of negative 240 that add up to 0. Or sorry, add up to 22. So to multiply and get negative 240, the bigger one needs to be positive. So we're looking for factors of negative 240. Negative 10, positive 24 would work, but when you add them, you get 14. So we need them farther apart than just the 10 and 24. Next pair I thought of was negative 5 times 48 would be negative 240. But when you add those, it's 43. So they need to be closer together. Let's try maybe negative 8 and 30. Those will add up to 22. Alright, so this is the pair we need. Split the middle. Factor by grouping. Greatest common factor of the first 2 terms is x. Greatest common factor of the last 2 terms is 30. We have the x minus 8 in common. We're left with x plus 30. Product equal to 0, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. X is a length that you've extended it, and so only a positive answer makes sense. So if we look back at the original problem, what should the dimensions of the new studio be? So if we add 8 to each of these lengths, 12 plus 8 gives us 20 for that dimension, and then the other one so if you add 8 to each dimension, 12 plus 8 gives us 20 feet, and 10 plus 8 gives us 18 feet, so the new dimensions will be 20 feet by 18 feet, and if you multiply those together, you do get 360.